Paltrocast.
Danny, how are you today, aside from having, to speak to this guy?
Not bad. So far, so good.
So we were connected because you are now a Hall of Fame inductee through the Personal Managers Hall of Fame. Is that your first Hall of Fame induction?
It is definitely my first induction into any kind of a Hall of Fame. Yes.
Yeah, as a longtime, lifelong rock fan, you're used to hearing people go, why isn't that band in there? In your case, was there any hesitation towards putting the attention on yourself as a manager and getting the Hall of Fame induction?
I was very, very flattered. I wasn't that familiar with the Personal Managers Hall of Fame, but it was very flattering when I got an email a few weeks ago. And, once I went on their website and understood who was involved, I was very honored and happy to say, give them a quick yes.
Got it. So they reached out of the blue. You said yes, and here we are. Simple as that.
That's pretty much it. Yes, it was out of the blue to me. I'm sure they had a process, which I don't know, but I was again, I was very flattered, and it's nice to be recognized that way, and especially by colleagues, by people that do the same weird job that I do.
But behind me, I'm sure you can see there's a bunch of books. A couple of them are yours. Big fan of your books. The first one that I ever read was Bumping into Geniuses. And that's where I learned that, oh, that guy also crossed paths with Led Zeppelin. That's not even in his bio usually. So we see the Nirvana, the Led Zeppelin, the Sonic Youth, etc. But it's fascinating to me that that's only one tiny facet of your career, because there's the management stuff, which led to this Hall of Fame induction. Is it 4 books at this point?
5 books.
5 books.
And so far, maybe I got 1 or 2 more in me. But yeah, five books I've published.
5 books. And Air America, that chapter of your life as well, and the journalism related to your political views, that's another career. Modern Records, Artemis Records, etc. So all these years later, how do you describe yourself when somebody goes, hey, Danny, what do you do for a living? Nice to meet you. What do you say at this point?
Well, I'm a big believer in being here now, and nobody, when they ask that question, want to hear about 50 some years of twists and turns. So I say I have a personal management company that I've run for many years, and I've also written several books.
Pretty
So
concise.
if people want to, if anyone's interested in, everything since the Woodstock Festival, I've got some kind of a bio online. And because I started in the business when I was 18, it's now like literally 55 years. So, of course, there's a lot of different chapters to it, like anybody's life over a span of that period of time. But I have been able to stay in the music business all those years, and I'm really grateful for it. It's for a guy who wasn't, dropped out of college after 1 week. I really feel very fortunate that I found a place in the world.
Well, I have a stupid question, or at least what I think is a stupid question. Now, there's also the Daniel Goldberg, successful screenwriter, producer, etc. Did you become Danny because he was first prominent before you were?
No, I was Danny. That's just what my parents called me. Except if I was in trouble, my mother would sometimes call me Daniel, but that was a rare occasion. I was just Danny from the time I was a kid. That's what my parents called me, and that's what I call myself all these years. I spoke to that Daniel Goldberg. He passed away pretty recently. Yeah. Very accomplished guy, and we were getting each other's mail for a while when I was living in Los Angeles, and we had a nice laugh about that. But he very, very distinguished career in the film business. I didn't know him very well, but we did share the same name. Goldberg's a pretty common name, especially in the entertainment business. So it's not surprising that there was another one with the same first name.
Right. There's multiple Gary Goldbergs out there as well. There's a lot of notable Goldbergs at this point in time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before Woodstock, which was obviously just a few years ago. Did you know that you were a lifer in entertainment when you got started that early on?
I knew I wanted to be
Mhm.
because, as I said, I was always, kind of struggling in high school. I just didn't find teachers that, that liked me that much, and I kind of ADD at that time,
Sure.
and when I discovered there was a music business and that the diverse cast of characters that could get into it and do well, and they weren't all people with Ivy League degrees or things like that, and that the fact that I was this passionate fan of rock and roll wasn't a liability, but could actually be an asset in something. I just hung on for dear life. I knew I wanted to stay in that world if I could, because it was the one place in the external world that where I seemed to have a place in. And so yeah, I my first job was working for Billboard as a clerk. I was 18. I just wanted a job so I could move out of my parents' apartment. I didn't know there was a music business. I got it through an ad in the New York Times, and only when I got there and started leafing through this weekly magazine did I understand there was a whole business around this music that I loved, and that people like could get paid, and some of them could pay pretty well to have something to do with that music, even if they weren't musicians, because I was never a musician, just a fan. So
Mhm.
once I found out that existed, I really was highly motivated to stay in the tent, and I still feel that way today. I very appreciate that it's something I know something about and could play some role in. But yeah, I knew within a month or two of my first job at Billboard, I was hooked. Yeah.
Yeah, the origin stories of industry executives always intrigues me. That a person I've gotten to know well over the years, David Krebs, he had his JD and his MBA, yet he had to work in the mailroom at William Morris. And he's working beside, say, David Geffen. There's that kind of an origin story. So when you're working in Billboard in your cub reporter kind of days like that, was there anyone of future note that you were working alongside that we would know?
I don't think so. I was but my first job there was not as a reporter. My first job there was as a clerk in the chart department, making dozens of phone calls to record stores to just manually make a list of what was selling.
Right.
Then I found out that there were other people in the office that were able to get into concerts for free and get records if they just
Right.
wrote their opinions about it. And I nagged them to let me get a foot into that door. I mean, Billboard as an institution there were a number of very important people in the business that started at Billboard, one of whom was Seymour Stein, one
Right.
of whom was Jerry Wexler. Uh,
Oh, I
but
didn't know
of
that one.
people that, yeah, Jerry Wexler worked for Billboard, and that's where he coined the phrase rhythm and blues. The chart had been called the race music chart, and Jerry thought that was not appropriate and talked them
Right.
into changing it to rhythm and blues. He literally invented that phrase. One of my great heroes, Jerry Wexler, and somebody I got to meet when I was young and who influenced me by example. I can't think of anybody that was there when I was there that went on into the business. I wish I had a great one liner about that, but I think I'm the only person who started in journalism
Mhm.
or publicity who became a record company president. It was just a certain set of circumstances worked out that way. But all different kinds of people have become successful managers from a very wide paths, and I'm glad I get to do it.
And when you mentioned record company president, before I name checked Modern and I name checked Artemis, I love the Artemis chapter of your career in terms of what it represented, where it was a lot of people who got dropped by major labels, where major labels went, we don't think that we can sell 500,000 or a million copies. But then you approach with a business model where you went, this is a cottage industry. These people deserve a fair shake. Do you look back at the Artemis chapter fondly?
Um, I'm very. I love the people I worked with at Artemis. Many of them are still friends of mine, and Daniel Glass has gone on to tremendous success.
Oh yeah.
Last note,
Yep.
he was the president of Artemis. Michael Crumper created Missing Piece, which is one of the great marketing companies.
Yep.
And in general, it was a very exciting time because it was Michael Chambers invested money in it, and we were able to really do something different. Unfortunately, the timing of it, starting in 2000, was almost certainly the worst time to have started a record company, because after 40 years of increases in record revenues, that began the start of 14 years of decreases. So the underlying economics for a startup were brutal. I didn't have the vision to understand what file sharing and digitization was going to do to the business. Not that any of the people running the big companies understood it either.
No.
So it was very disappointing how short its lifespan was. But we put out some great records. It's where I first worked closely with Steve Earle, who still manages today. Where I worked with Warren Zevon for the last 3 albums he did in his career, and we had a big pop hit with "Who Let the Dogs Out" that Steve Greenberg brought to us, and couple of gold hip hop records, one by Corrupt and one by Kaya. Did a Hubert Sumlin's last record. Number of
that was one that I really liked. Todd Rundgren.
Space Hog. Oh God, we lost a lot of money on Space Hog. That was one of Michael Chambers' favorites, and a fantastic band. Just couldn't figure out, the timing of what they did creatively. Just didn't find a lane. We certainly tried, but
a lot of people tried with Space Hog, including Seymour Stein. It's great to see that Royston is still making music. But I like, again, that you gave a chance to a lot of people who the major labels went, this person.
Well, I was just trying to figure out my own role. I had run major labels for the previous 6 years. I had a whirlwind period in the last end of the 90s where I was president of Atlantic Records, chairman of Warner Brothers Records, and chairman of the Mercury Records Group. And several of those years, the company I was running was the #1 major label. But the business changed, the culture changed, and I was older now. I turned 50 in the year 2000, and there are some people, Clive Davis being the most amazing example, who just completely stay up to date with whatever's happening with teen culture and with pop culture. My ability to concentrate on the full range of popular music waned, and I felt I was best focusing on the stuff I understood best, which included artists who were either of my generation or 10 or 15 years younger, and whose audience is same. And that's just where I thought I had added value. And that's still the same way I feel about what I do now as a manager. The Artemis was really kind of the next phase of figuring out my identity and where I could make a difference, given my strengths and weaknesses. So that sense that there are some artists who can really have important careers over the age of 40 probably started with my previous management company, Gold Mountain, when I worked with Bonnie Raitt, because she had been dropped by Warner's. She's close to 40. She was considered, kind of washed up by the big record companies at the time. I think 14 labels passed on her, and finally I got Joe Smith at Capitol to sign her, and the record that he picked up on a pretty cheap deal at the time, and understandably, because her sales had declined, ended up winning the Grammy and changing her career and mine. So I'd seen it happen once, and then at Mercury, I was lucky enough to pick up the Lucinda Williams Car, Wheels, and a Gravel Road album, another artist who was in her 40s and had her biggest success later on. So I have had those two experiences. I believe it's possible. Tried to do it at Artemis, and that's what I try to do in terms of representing the people I represent now, is to recognize that part of a career, because that's where like I said, I think I actually know what I'm doing.
Well, one last question before I let you go. And of all the many jobs and credits that I had mentioned, I didn't mention that you produced the HBO show Vinyl, which historically.
No. Just to be clear, I was a consultant on Vinyl. I was not one of the producers of it. I mean, the producers were like Mick Jagger and Martin Scorsese and Terry Winter, people of incredible accomplishment in the film and TV world. I was just sort of one of the 3 or 4 people they hired to be kind of a rock expert to consult them. It was really cool to be around for that, but I certainly don't want to misrepresent what my role was.
Got it. Well, finishing that thought right there, that show is notoriously renewed for a second season, then canceled. But your credits, Dirty Dancing, working on that as a music supervisor,
Yeah.
etc. So you also had a lot of success in the film and television spaces. So do you have anything on the horizon in the music or film world, the film or the TV world that we can know about, or do we just have to wait and see until Variety says so and the strike is over?
Well, I'm really concentrate on the 6 inches in front of me. That's always been, the way I try to marshal my energy. And among the artists I work with, I manage a great Irish rock band called the Waterboys. And Mike Scott's the singer, songwriter, lead guitar player, and he's created an album that'll come out in 2025 about the life of Dennis Hopper.
Wow.
Very innovative concept album with a lot of great guests, including a voiceover by Bruce Springsteen and a vocal by Fiona Apple, as well as the Waterboys. And we're looking to see if there's some sort of a creative documentary, stylized documentary that could be made around that, because it's an album about a film personality. So in my role as a manager, that's a project I'm hoping can see the light of day. But no, I'm my role now is, I'm very grateful to still have a management company, to be able to do it. It's and with 7 or 8 clients, and I enjoyed this last 6 or 7 years spending more time writing and getting back to my journalism roots, and hopefully there's another book or two. But one day at a time is always a good idea, but a particularly good idea at the stage of that my career is at.
Well, Danny, congrats on this Hall of Fame induction. We're now going to have to see you mention every press release as Hall of Fame inductee, Hall of Fame manager, Hall of Fame music industry executive, Danny Goldberg. So congrats in advance on that. Looking forward to the next book and more releases from your roster. And that Waterboys thing does sound fantastic. So looking forward to a lot of stuff from you, Danny.
All right. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and hope we meet face to face sometime soon.
Paltrocast.